right. Welcome for I don't know, this is my 20th, but when the lightning strikes, the lightning strikes. And so um this is just having conversations, and I guess this is my new season because we are in a season where we, all of us, the melanated people as well as non, need to just start having conversations, and we need to start shaking hands and understanding the intent and the purpose of growth that we see in everyone. And what has sparked me to start just having conversations is the movie Sinners. Sinners, if you have not seen it, then I mean, you have your reasons, I'm sure. But what we're going to do is, well, let me first introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Kenda Bell, also known as Kenda Bell Sproul, also known as the Joy Factor Mama. And I love supporting people to enhance and take advantage of every sacred opportunity that life gives us. And that comes through everyday life, your family, the way that you worship, the way that you show up in the world, the way that the world shows up for you, and the things that we see in social media. So, before we get into the subject, I just want to give a little overview on why this topic is to me very important, and it is divine, because a couple of weeks ago I got this idea to that we are the algorithm. We are the algorithm. And guys, share this video. If you're watching, share, share, share. Everyone's talking about it, and you want to talk about it. We want to talk about it. Everybody got an angle. So please share, share, share. Okay. So I had this idea that we are the algorithm. And I started playing around on my laptop, and I created this shirt that says, I am the algorithm. I manifest at the speed of thought, right? So I'm thinking, oh, this is a cool shirt. I can, I don't know where this came from, but then I saw Sinners and it all made sense. So I did a couple of posts, and my former pastor was like, would you like to talk about this publicly? And I said, definitely. And so I would like to welcome to the conversation Dr. Kevin Andre Brooks, the good Reverend from Memphis, Tennessee. So he's in the mix and the culture and the energy of where that film was based in. Yes, it was based in Mississippi, but Mississippi, Tennessee, they all in that area. So before I go any further, I would like the good doctor to share a little bit about who he is and why he wanted to talk about sinners. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Sister Kenda, for your great work and for this platform. Again, once a pastor, always a pastor. I'm excited about things that God is indeed manifesting in your life around this time. But I am an educator, organizer, philosophy professor, and indeed theologian, and have been doing this work for some 30 plus years with a specific focus in philosophy, African philosophies, religion, and culture. And so this subject was quite interesting and quite dear to my heart. For those who know me from Baltimore, also Chicago, as well as Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I was born. And God has brought me back here to do some organizing, mobilizing. And interestingly enough, my family hails from Sunflower County, what they call Sunflower Plantation. And it's important to note in the history of Black migrants, Kenda, your folk didn't start off in Maryland. Most cases, they came by way of Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama. So that whole great migration process for many of the descendants of enslaved people was in the deep South. Either, interestingly enough, not just Jamestown, Virginia, but St. Augustine, Florida. Before that was 1619, that was St. Augustine, Florida. And so, but some would argue too that Africans were already here, and that's a whole another story. But nevertheless, that's a little bit about myself, and I'm excited to encroach this very, very important conversation in my lens, and I'll be presented from someone who's unapologetically, uncompromisingly a Black pastor and a Black preacher, and someone who speaks the spoken word in a Afrocentric, unapologetic, Afro-Asiatic Christian perspective. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to dispel and debunk all of the notions that people believe that Christianity is a white man's religion, and we're going to understand why this movie is so important, because it addresses what I see as one of the major problems with how Black folks see themselves is a Black theology. And so regardless of your religious affiliation, regardless if you do not believe in a faith tradition, we're going to talk about, I want to have this conversation around the Black church and how the Black church has always been an incubator for what we call as African spirituality. And I'll close by saying this, Kenda, on my Facebook page, I've gotten like over 20 responses or shares. It's caused a controversy. And it's probably a good prompt for our conversation.
Okay, do tell.
I said after watching the movie, and I started seeing this reaction by people. And I said, I don't know if you saw it on my page or not, but folk who suggest African spirituality is demonic after watching the movie Sinners are vampires.
Oh, wait a minute, Pastor. You didn't say that, did you?
I said it, and it caused a ripple, and 19 shares, and many people agreed. And it speaks to the fact that we really lack a real understanding of what it means to understand who we are. A lot of what we have been conditioned in under what we call white European Greco-Roman Christianity of oppression, the Black church has always had an hermeneutics of African spirituality. And even in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, where I am a pastor, if you look at the symbol, which you are AME, and once AME, you always AME. When you understand, you understand that the African Methodist Episcopal Church always had a Black agenda. It established for African people with the Free African Society. And if you look at the symbol or the graphic for the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was the Free African Society established by Richard Allen, and to foster freedom, salvation, liberation, and Christian education under the guise of oppression, they knew who they were. So they unapologetically identified themselves as Africa because they had to associate themselves not with a idea of slavery or Negroism or Black, but Africa is a continent. And so they took ownership of that. However, and not just the slave masters' religion, they interpreted, as Howard Thurman said, they interpreted theology from the lens of their Africanness. And when you understand the Bible, you understand that the Bible is a manifestation of the theology of the world, and all religions are embedded. That's why Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father but by me. You got to understand that coded metaphysical language for what it means to be in the gospel. But I close by saying this: if you look at the graphic or the image or the symbol for African Methodism, you will see a cross and you will see an anvil. And the anvil was a symbol of the blacksmith shop. And the blacksmith,
that's Ogun, right?
Absolutely, it is indeed.
That's Ogun. Come on now.
And again, you may have heard in the Black church tradition, the Sons of Thunder. And right now, the AME Church is a global church. I was in South Africa last year, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's always been a connection for over. My church this year was celebrate 150 years, but the Black church, i.e., the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is a village, which is a global community, has always been unapologetically and uncompromisingly African, have an African spiritual tradition, not based off a Jesus that was introduced by what some would call Wayimbo, but a Jesus that we interpreted to understand and look like ourselves. And we have noted theologians like Henry McNeil Turner, who was a major expansionist of what we would call African spirituality from America all around the world, and set up these Black economic nationalist and political nationalist movements, not
Mm-hmm.
in America but also in Africa. So you go to South Africa, you go to Liberia, you go to Ghana, you go to Zimbabwe. You will see that these traditions started by formerly enslaved people in America understood that we are not going to just wait on anybody to dictate how we live, but
Mm-hmm.
because of a faith tradition, because of what some like to call is this thing, I'm sure we'll talk about it, what this hoodoo is, right? Whatever that is, whatever that comes from, right? Always been embedded in our theology and in our culture.
Yes, I often say you get them that prayer circle together. Them women get to praying. They get into trance. Things move.
Mm-hmm.
The ring and shouting. That's
Mm-hmm.
African that we have transferred into the African church here.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point it became like a disconnect because many people of color have felt that that is something that has oppressed them and was not fully theirs. And I understand that Christianity did not start in Europe. It was more so commercialized, patented, and stylized there. But a lot of people don't feel a sense of being able to be their total African self. Now, I do know that things are changing, but what I loved about Sinners is that it incorporated everything, the whole Black experience. When the movie started, the guitar was on the altar. It was on the altar. Well, not immediately, immediately because they showed what happened. But before Sammy went on his journey, the father had taken the instrument and put it on the altar. And a lot of times we do not talk about the Black father. And I thought it was very powerful that they made sure to show that the father put the covering on his son, and and Sammy completed it. So the prayers of our ancestors will carry us and heal us and keep us safe, because he knew that his son was going to take this journey. He knew that. And he put the word on him. He blessed him and anointed him. And the son had the word in him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he took that word and did he have a time that night, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of people felt that, how can I say this? That the film did not celebrate or hold up the church, but I don't think so. I saw it totally different. Mm-hmm. How about you?
Well, I read a interesting post from someone and said that the movie Sinners was clearly for people that read books. Number one. Okay. Number two, the movie Sinners, and rightfully, you can't really talk about sinners without understanding this whole idea of what a sinner is.
Right.
Theological construct anchored in, interestingly enough, what you identified as Christianity, and everybody has these interpretations of what Christianity is, as been adapted or commercialized, right? But it has a real root in its ideology. And so for those who want to know, you can kind of meet me at Providence in Baltimore, Chicago, or even Memphis to really understand what is really going on. But and as I say to my friends, it is a treatise on the theology, the liberation of the Black church. And archetypically and metaphysically and anthropologically, it speaks of the context of the heaven on earth. And many of us who were, even if you don't accept your Christian identity accepts you, it says the Lord's Prayer. Why we call it the Lord's Prayer? Abba, Father who art in heaven. So the Father becomes the number one metaphysical concept for the manifestation of relationship with a mother. Okay, that in itself is a concept, theological concept. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the question is what the Holy Spirit. And I'm going to park that Holy Spirit for a second. And so many of you, I know you talked about algorithms and vibration and opportunity to manifest the presence and power of God. I don't want to speak too philosophical, metaphysical, because sometimes people need to be grounded. And what Christianity does is ground folk to a reality. The word becomes flesh, right? And so let's get back to this point around the Father. So the Father indeed, and most people saw it, it is a unapologetically proclamation on the Black theology of African spirituality in the Black church, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Yeshua, in the name of Lolodumare, in the name of, again, those archetypical constructs, and that's a whole nother story, that's a whole nother lesson, because what people don't see is everything is connected and intersected in one way or another. So we can look at the Old Testament and the Leviticus, the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Number, and Deuteronomy. We can go back and look at Ephah. We can look at Egypt. We can look at all of the various cultural cosmological systems, which speaks to an algorithm of that which is spiritual manifesting itself in the presence of a body, a human. And that human we are called Yeshua, or that human we are called Jesus. Jesus is just a title, which means Savior. And so we need to be saved. Again, I'm not going to the Bible, because the Bible makes it real clear that when man woman chose to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he says, the Bible, the Father in heaven says, hey, you're covered, Sammy, as long as you stay in my presence. As soon as you get out of my presence, you're going to take on self-consciousness. Let me put it another way. Soon as you take on self-consciousness, you're going to become a vampire.
You're going to become a vampire, or would you be?
I said what I said. Nope, you will become a vampire. See, my statement hangs in an understanding of the theology, understanding what got the people out, what got Adam and Eve, this concept out of the presence of God, out of the Garden of Eden. And so he says, and let me take you back to your Bible study days in your Christian Sunday school. He says that as soon as you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die. Before that, they were in metaphysical, spiritual realm. They were in the presence and the power of God.
Right. They did not know about the how can I say this, the physical. So
Why would they
they
know about it? They would have a need to know about it because that's the point of the text. Again, sometimes we
right.
get in and put our stuff in the text, but how do you know what you know until you know what you know that you know? And so when you take on knowledge, then you become self-conscious.
Of course. I think that's with everyone. And so are you so let me ask you this. So do you think that, and this is off topic, but I'm gonna bring it back around, I guess. So when Sammy went on his journey, right? I felt that he was going to come back instantaneously. But don't you think that sometimes, because he said that there's always an escape. So to me, when he said that, he and his father already knew that he was definitely going to go out there, but he was going to take the option to escape. So when you think about, and this is something else, when you think about at that time, this was 1932, and the people were maybe what, 60 years out of like you know, freedom. If that was 1932 and he was in the cotton field first thing in the morning, barefoot, picking cotton, and for him there was nothing else for him. So a lot of people I saw were like, well, he was wrong and he was crazy and he shouldn't have left, and why did he do that? And I often think to myself, at that point, that type of life, like, we cannot comprehend that. That's a heavy life to be boxed in. And do you think that at that particular time, I put it that way, the church, his father, was trying to keep them as safe as possible because of the ills that they had experienced, but he still had to find out on his own, which is a dangerous task. But like, how could you ask someone to continue living that Jim Crow life at that time? Like, what would be the value that the father could have shared?
So again, I'm coming from a theological perspective, an African-centered perspective, and even a Hebraic perspective. So I first brought up to you the whole idea of, again, sin, right? The sin. I brought you to Adam and Eve and the decision. Now, I know it was hard for you to process the thought that once they became self-conscious, they became vampires, right? But to answer
no, I get it. I totally get that. I
well,
get it.
Well, again, I'm not trying to proselytize you to make you become a Christian, but you can call yourself what you want to call yourself. But the point is that the escape that you making reference to is the covering, is the blood on the doorpost that says, hey, you getting ready to go out amongst these vampires, and vampires like blood. You're going to like this. And I'm going to give up my blood offering. I'm going to give up my elect. I'm going to give up that which you might not be covered. That's a whole nother story. Let me get back to your fundamental point. You're saying
But he was covered. That's my whole point. He was covered.
But again, you actually said, so it's not escapism, it's the covering. And so I'm only correlating that to the anthropological and cultural construct of Jesus. Again, so the Father says, as long as you are in the presence of my faith in this Black church or African spirituality, you got free will. So the whole point of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life. As soon as you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, eat, you're going to die. And when you die, it is the beginning of an ecosystem where you now have to not depend on the metaphysical presence and the power of God, but you're dependent upon food and sex, and you're a physical being. And ultimately, physical beings, we eat and kill one another. Oh, you like that, don't you? And so now you live in a time where you now have to be able to coexist, right? And you can go out and you can follow the will of the flesh, and you can follow. And then I ain't gonna talk about the whole point of the serpent or the so-called snake and its symbolism in there. Again, we're still talking about sin. Sin means out of the presence, disobedience. And again, that Black church tradition is anchored on, Kenda, surviving, right? Surviving oppression, survivor under economic exploitation, surviving under tyranny, survivor on the fact that, you can kill and eat each other up. But if you create this community where there's this level of accountability and a level of real libation, real invocation, real praise, you can do what's called transcendental meditation. You can really start to understand what it means to be an algorithm. And then that's where the blues come from. That's where the spirituals come from. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. You might control my body, my physical condition, but I recognize one thing. I am a spirit being. I'm an African spirituality which affirms my spirit being. So whether you call it Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, whatever, I am connected to the real source. And because I understand the power of the blood of the Lamb, preaching now, Jesus, I am forever covered. So the prodigal son, as the father knew, was going to come back home because we all got free will. Oh, and the best way to do it is a great song of the church. You might remember it from your days in the church. We'll understand it by and by. Things I might not know, but we'll understand. Opo said, hey, look, you'll understand it better by and by. So he came back home. Now we can talk about the guitar. We can talk about those percussion. We can talk about those things which opens up the prayer and the meditation and the chakras of praise, right? And the Bible makes clear that Judah, or God, inhabits the praises of the peoples. What is that praise and worship that connect us to something greater than our essence? I'll be quiet right there because that's the power of the Black church tradition and its rooted African spirituality that shapes a theology of liberation, salvation, and education.
Oh, most definitely. So one of the things that, I noted was that we can talk about, oh, the church is this, the church is that, but what we have to understand is that, to me, it was their way of gaining back control over their bodies. We have to understand that while we may say, oh, it's restrictive and all these different things, these are people whose body had been exploited, some of them from birth, where they had no control over their body. So for them, being in church and abiding by these rules and edicts help them to feel safe in their mind, but safer from the quote unquote evils. But conversely, it also at certain times compressed that pain, that anger, that fear, and I think that the movie was talking about the dualities of things and how if you, to me, go through either extreme, we're going to pop. We're going to run and rebel, and for the record, I read my Bible, I reference it, I still do all of those things, but I have expanded my thinking around that, because again, people don't, they're very harsh, but what I want to know is, how would you have functioned? What would have been what would you have held on to if you were coming darn near fresh off of slavery, and you knew that if you had like a church, that they might not bother you as much. So you're creating safety and a sense of power, because unfortunately, the church, the Bible, was seen as a source of power as well. But it was still, how can I say this? Commercialized again by the European. I think what it was intended to be, it got twisted, and it became then, in a sense, not as holy, because there were certain people, not saying the essence of it, but there were people that were killing others in the name of, harming people, pillaging cultures. So how can we heal that? How can we heal that to understand that that is something that is valuable to us when it has been used to harm us? How can people be able to take a critical eye and still be, how can I say, I'll just stop right there.
I hear you loud and clear, right? And I'm not trying to make an apologist for the history of how anybody, how anybody uses anything. I can know Kenda Bell and know Kenda Bell is holy, but I do know that Kenda Bell has the propensity to do evil. Kevin Brooks has the propensity to do evil. I don't know, you might not do that, but I know me, right? Because that's the point of the Bible. That can be used as a tool of oppression, and it can be used for a tool of liberation. That is anything that is the byproduct of a metaphysical idea that is anchored on, again, do not miss this point of how do we coexist, where we have to depend upon one another. So regardless, you call it the Bible, again, Ephah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, whatever you call it, these ideas, these medical physical systems are put in place so that we might get back into, you brought it up, algorithms, you might get back into the presence of the Lord. But anytime you start talking about the Black church, you want the preacher to apologize and debate what happened in history.
Oh, no, I'm not debating you. We've had our discussion.
No, I ain't talking about you, but that's what I'm saying. To answer the question about what the white man did to the Bible. Black people do it. Black people do with stuff, just because, you can put a kufi on your head and you can call on the name of Olodumare. The Black church or the Black spiritual tradition hangs on the ethics of individuals based off trauma. So let's get back to the point you're making with the movie, right? The blues is praise in the midst of suffering.
Yes.
There's a difference between Jesus and Christ, right? The liberated Savior, right? So something has to deal with the suffering that we experience in our body, right? And that's why the Black church was so important. But keep in mind that same Black church that I talked about, that same African spirituality that people want to talk about, the white man did it. Yeah, the white man would use anything to enculturate and indoctrinate individuals to do absolutely anything. But what the oppressor did with the Bible, whether God you call it from Europe or Africa, whatever, it's just a matter of your level of consciousness, right? Your understanding. And for us as a people, we were English. I don't care what you say. If you speak English, you were colonized by the English. You speak English, right? If you don't have to call yourself a Christian, but these people were Christians. So what do we do with our hermeneutics of intelligence? We still,
there you go, showing off your doctorate.
No. I'm just showing off the term. Hermeneutics means interpretation of the transfer of a spirit, right?
Thank you.
Not showing off. It's CDN. That's what divine African spiritualists do. We boast in the fact that the word comes flesh and we become tension. That tension makes people insecure. And that level of insecure, and when we do that drum call as a liberated people, knowing that we don't control our bodies, but you can't take my praise, even though the midst of suffering, you can't take my blues, you can't take my gospel, you can't take my rock and roll, you can't take my expression of humanity.
Yes, all of that.
A religion that tries to kill my humanity, or even an educational system that tries to control my humanity, is that which puts me into subjugation. And so there is no coincidence that Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, these notable insurrectionists.
This is what I'm saying. Yes.
This were AME Black preachers that fostered liberation, salvation, education, transformation for the building of an institution where everybody understood that what we might do, don't miss this, externally as Christian, internally we're anchored in an African blood, brotherhood, and sisterhood.
Yes. So for me, I love the movie from beginning to end. As I said, when the father blessed his son because he knew what he was going to do, I said, see, it's right there. So why I don't know what's going on. Why are people so afraid and scared? Why are there certain Christians that were like afraid? Because
let me chime in. Let's not spend too much time, because people are only conditioned to do and be what they're doing, right? And so we can talk about that, and I don't spend a lot of time, energy around that. I can't see the comments in the place, but
I'm sorry.
No problem. It is because, see, again, Black folk during that time, 50 years or 100 years before 1932, let's look at 1832.
1832.
They were lynching, so you talk about legalism, or you talk, boy, do this or we can die, right? We got to learn 100 years of survival under this root of oppression, right? We can't pray through the drum. We got to be in touch with nature. We got to be in God was real to us, right? And, in the South tradition, boy, my mama would say, I'm going to have to beat you. I might not want to, but I'm going to have to beat you so you can feel the natural consequences of this pain, because you're getting old enough where you're not understanding my reason, even though I'm teaching you a critical thinking. But when we can't be diplomatic, we can't negotiation, I'm gonna take on the slave culture of beating you, because we respond to that beating. That's the whole point of the gospel. Oh, he was bruised for our iniquities, right? He was for our transgression. You see it? But again, it hangs in how you interpret it. You can interpret it as a liberator, or you can interpret it as a tool of oppression. So the Bible, yes, it was indeed used as a tool of oppression. But don't miss the metaphysical and cultural and anthropological point of the movie. Again, because we're spending time, you start talking about the father and the son, father and Sammy. Now, the father had a brother.
Yes, I'm getting to that. Yes.
Again, but look at this. Let's look at the dualities, right? Because people miss. This is Bible.
Duality.
Wednesday night Bible study, right? You have Cain and Abel. You have, again, not dealing with situational ethics, right? You got these brother constructs, anthropological constructs that exist in both you. There's this Kevin and Michelle. Oftentimes she said, "Oh, I know Kevin, but I also know Andre," right? So there, you call it whatever you call it, right? There's you women, but we all have that, right? The question is, which one is going to rule? So the father. What do we know about the father of Smoke and Stack?
That he went mad and he was very angry, and he used to beat on them, and allegedly the older twin let him go, because we can't say those words online. But
let me ask you a quick question. Whose guitar was it?
The brothers.
Smoke and Stack's father.
Well, yes, his father's brother. Yes.
Exactly. So one thing in the Black church tradition is that we've always had to deal with the trauma. And so we're going to always deal with that. Again, go back to my vampire point, which is a powerful point, which goes to this thing of sinners, right? You got to understand this idea, theological, cultural, anthropological, and metaphysical about sinners. But that's for a whole nother day. You have to see me in Providence on that. But
yes,
here's the point, Kenda, that suffering has to be resolved. And
it has to be. And for us, I really feel that we have to expel it. We have to exercise.
That sounds good, but that sounds good. But that sounds, let me say, that sounds good. Again, we're talking about the movie, and we're talking about the church. See, everybody got a thing of what will happen.
That's what I'm talking about. Because in church, they would shout, they would fall, they get the energy out, even if they are. That's right. What I'm saying. But in both cases, when you talk about the church, gospel, the laying of the hands, the Holy Ghost, all of those things to expel that trauma and that pain, that
I hear you.
Happens there. And then when we look at the juke joint, it's a quote unquote darker variation of it in some people's eyes. I'm just saying. But in both cases, people are in a need to exercise and to move that trauma out of their bodies. And we are, I feel, our bodies is sacred, number one, and it is technology when we move and we heal. And to go to the juke joint, no matter how dark or sinister, it still gave people a sense of freedom, an extra layer where they could do like what they wanted to do for like a few hours. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that out.
Well, you're doing what most people do, right? Trying to create situational ethics, right? And I'm saying to you that they are one and the same. So we're dealing with trauma.
Okay. I can get with that. They're one and the same.
And that's the problem. Everybody has an interpretation. Everybody has a feeling around it. Down here in Memphis, the same people who did the juke joint on Saturday night were the same people Sunday morning in the church. So
we would see them in church on Sunday. Look.
Again, I'm trying to get us to stop and have a non-participant anthropological concept called non-participant observer. And so I'm trying to get us to look back and say trauma is trauma. There has to be healing, right? But because of, again, regardless of how so-called cultural consciousness it is, we still have a lens of European, and Bobby White says, menticide about how we see something. So in my conversation, Kenda, all I'm saying to you, going back to the anthropological archetypical relationship with the father and Smoke and Stax's brother, you have Cain and Abel, you have Esau and Jacob, you have these things which for the Black church is fundamentally, how do we make meaning of what it means to be alive in a culture of oppression, in tyranny, in lynching? How do we live in a time where we can't even control our own body or even our own economy? So moving from 1832, where you were slave, to 1932, where you got freedom, but now you can't control your own economy. And if I try to control my own economy, which puts you in a conflict with Smoke and Stack, then dog, now I got to be able to, I can't make money off of the sharecropper script, right? I can't make money off of unreal money. So anytime, and this is key because this is the whole point of Black Wall Street and the Memphis Massacre, anytime the Black man and woman build economy, become producers, and this is a whole nother biblical concept, I dare not go into it tonight because we ain't ready. When they try to do economic nationalism, which the Black church was anchored in economic nationalism, the vampires come in our heads and our hearts and take it away and keep us from building. So
you can touch on that because I'm gonna say this. What I caught was, and there are people that are saying that Black people have land that we haven't stolen, which We know that, but they were already planning a scam where
Who was planning a scam? What do you mean?
Okay, so the white property owner or sheriff or whoever that guy was that sold.
Can I give you context for it? Because this is key, right? Because that movie was, again, let me give you the history around her. The sheriff was the steward of the law and the steward of the land. Right. So he was selling a slave market, right, where they slaughter people. He took them, he never intended for them to survive.
No, that's where I was going to say that he
was a Ku Klux Klan. Again, don't miss the point. He controlled the law and the economy and the politics. So there was no way that they were going to let economic development occur in Mississippi.
No, I get that totally, because I caught the fact that, number one, and what I love about, again, Smoke and Stack were twins, but they were, to me, again, the duality of man. And Sammy was like the in between. He was young.
Wait, what's that? Wait, hold, slow down.
In between. But listen, when the sheriff already had a plan to sell it to them, take their money, then come back and kill them and keep the land. And not that I'm shocked about it, but it's almost devastating to think how often that probably happened. How many people wanted to bought land, did their thing, and then they're dead and nobody knows about it.
But Kenda, let me push back right here. That's why this stuff is so real, right? Do you know that in 2025, right, coming out of 1932, right, and my family owns land in Mississippi and in Arkansas, right? Mm-hmm. Black folk had 12.8 million acres. Now they have only 1.2 million, right? Again, the South lost the war in terms of the Confederacy, right? So we started to build off that economic development, right? Because Negroes don't go to church anymore, we don't do that, right? That whole thing. The preacher just taking the tithe and taking the money, and you don't understand that we talk about cooperative economics and faith and self-determination as a concept, but they was practicing that. They bought the land, they built these cones, and that became a threat to white supremacists. So right now, Mississippi still has more. That white sheriff still exists, right? That economic system still exists. That political system still exists in the 21st century. They talked about Mount Bayou, right? They talked about Mount Bayou, a community that was anchored by Black folk, African spirituality, with number one, a Black church. Not sharecroppers, but own their own property.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't think overall that people have an issue with church.
Oh, yes, they do. They do. People got an issue with church. People got an issue with church.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. 1 second. My phone. Oh, darn it. I forgot my charger. 1 second. I'm sorry. Keep talking. Tell them.
But people, you can't say that's the whole point. And that's a beautiful thing about sinners. Is that it's not that this whole idea of church is not just about the institution, it's about the individual and the family. So any problem that we have, again, regardless, you talk about the Black relationship between man and woman, the Black relationship with family, the Black relationship with community, hangs on how, Kenda, that community, and you're going to like this since you're a metaphysical practitioner, since you're into Tantra yoga, hangs around what it is, the sun, right? The S-U-N and the S-O-N. You have to center your life around something that is bigger and greater than yourself. And if you do not, you're going to manifest the vampire attitude. You will exploit, you will manipulate, you will take, you will exploit. I can do it, you can do it. And that's the whole point of sin. Confess that you can be a vampire, right?
We're all sinners.
Well,
And I think,
don't miss the
but
point. Don't miss the point, though. Don't miss that point.
okay.
Don't miss the point. Because people say that in the Christian tradition. See, all this stuff I push back from everybody, right? What does it mean? We can spend a whole time talking about this ideology of sinners, right? I went there, but we couldn't spend that time when I was talking about, that whole idea where sin came into place with self-consciousness, right? Don't miss that, right? Because the truth of the matter is, let's look at this, right? You're a woman, right? You're a woman. I'll be done. I want you to personalize it, right? Can you imagine being a woman in 1932? Can you imagine?
No.
Can you imagine?
No,
the process. No, just process. Can you imagine being a woman for 1832, 1732, where your body did not belong to you? I'm talking about a black woman. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine for 2,000 years the tyranny and the pain and the suffering around being a woman, to be preyed on, right? To be exploited, to be raped, and to pillage, but to create a civilized society, right? That will foster protection and cultivation of woman. I'm not gonna go into the divinity of womanhood, but that's also connected to the power of the blues, the power of femininity. But look, I had to push us to understand what that means when we understand Mary and all these theological concepts. My point is, as you was leaving, regardless you call it the black church, I don't care if you call it Christian, Muslim, hoodoo, voodoo, atheist, there is something in the history of the world that tries to establish to us to make meaning of what it means to be alive. So I'm talking about the archetypical relationships, I'm talking about the metaphysical relationships, the cultural relationship, the political relationship, theological, social, and it hangs on people's level of consciousness. And that's why I love it. If you have not read, if you're not a reader, you would not get Sinners.
And yes, and that's a whole nother aspect of things that I think that a lot of people were not ready. I think a lot of people, number one, thought that the film, it was going to be like an action horror film. It was going to be, the gore and the this and the that. Because I'll tell you, I typically, if I think there's any films that's going to be showing people, downtrodden or beaten, especially Black people, that's horror. Like I can't watch that. I just don't want to see.
Why? When people say that all the time, when people say that, I oftentimes wonder why that's hard. That is horror, and I wouldn't call it a horror movie, but why is that hard? My wife and I had a conflict growing up with my children. I wanted my children to watch Roots, but she had the same position that you had, right? And I get it and I understand it, but that is the ugliness and the brutality of humanity.
Well, that's the whole. That's again the sin. That's me.
Are you calling it sin? I'm not calling it. That ain't sin.
Awareness. Me being aware of harm, and me.
Why is that hard to see? Why is that hard? Oh, I love it. Why is it?
Because that's just my choice. I don't want to see that. I'm just saying I don't want to see it, but it's not that I haven't seen it in the past, but for me, I like, The Help.
I love it.
Things like those films, it was uncomfortable for me to see them, but
right.
I ventured to see Sinners, and the movie touches on so much that it's to me, when you go see it, you're going to start thinking about everything. To me, you're going to either expand or you're going to contract out of fear. And I think that a lot of people were not ready for the context that they actually had to deal with. When he played in that juke joint scene and the ancestors came, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with ancestor um look, can we work together? Veneration. A lot of people are uncomfortable. It's not setting the ancestors over God or the Christ. It's giving honor to those that have died and done work so that you can have this opportunity. And I think a lot of people did not like the conjuring, if you will, of him. As soon as he played, they started showing past and present and future. And a lot of people were uncomfortable, but it showed that we're all connected. It was very healing to understand, like you said, that healing, that expression goes beyond the space that we're actually in. And the idea that the vampires saw that light, they saw the light and they wanted to partake in it. So are we supposed to dim our light for fear that the evil ones and the vampires are going to come and get us? Or how can a good, gifted person show up with their gift outside of the confines of church? Is it possible?
Again, you're doing what many people do, right?
What you mean?
I'm about to explain it. Again, people see things based off their level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking people won't see what you saw, and folk who think they see it on different levels, right? And I'm not even arguing any of that. So I agree. Yeah. I agree and understand what you're saying, right?
Well, how can you explain it to other people?
Well, again, but see, I explain it to people all the time. But I'm in the black church. But if hold on, no, listen to me now. But if you see the black church is that which confines, and everybody got an ideology of what the black church is, they got their own interpretation, their own hermeneutics on a specific level, and say they do not see the inclusiveness. Let's back this thing up to something you said, right? Getting back to the fact that even with all of your brilliance, intelligence, and wisdom, you said that you choose not to see those things, right? Because it brings up that trauma. You'll rather watch the sanitized, live happily ever after type of movies, right? And that's just process, just follow my flow of point and thinking, right? That's why shooting of 2 little yo boys and black on black violence is normalized within our community, is because we don't see it anymore. It is part of what happens with self-hatred from black. Just process. Let's hear what I'm saying before as you try to think about it, right? Because I'm making a point. Black on black pain, white on black pain, right? We don't want to see it because it comes normalized. But here's the point I want to make it. Again, everything I'm saying is anchored in a theology based off of what the sinners in the movie is about. The whole point of Sammy, and even the point of Sammy even being an archetypical manifestation of Christ, if I be it, right? In music, regardless if it's manifested in what you said. I have not brought situational ethics up at any time. I keep saying to you, I'm evil, right? I'm evil. And because I can say that, I'm clear that I'm not going to be a vampire, right? Because I'm saved, right? And my salvation distinguished me something because I've been covered in the blood, right? And Jesus said this to the disciples. This is key. Again, y'all just looking at it as a story, but it's a powerful story. Well, he says, do this in remembrance of me. This is my body and this is my blood. And the whole point of the crucifixion.
You know me so good. Let me mute myself.
But no, again, the whole point, don't miss this. I gotta show you my crucifixion. I gotta show you my suffering. I gotta show you my trauma. I gotta show you my pain. I gotta show you that will cover you, that you might find yourself not in a place where you have to experience that trauma enough, but you move from surviving to thriving, to move from a suffering to triumphant. So my cross now becomes a crown. That's how for 200 years, and people don't want to talk about this, the Black church has still been the singular most powerful community organizing, faith development, economic, political power institution that made that abolished slavery, that dismantled Jim Crow. And to now be in the 21st century, when you have as a lady called a Mango Mussolini, so I'm going to take back all of that. You can't teach this history because this history of African spirituality and the Black church, which I got teach people to disengage from it by giving you caricatures of the Black church like Flip Wilson, and you can joke it and you can talk about the mother and talk about the white man religion. Martin Luther King was the most powerful man on the planet, J. Edgar Hoover said. Elijah Muhammad, they were powerful because they fostered this faith, they fostered economic development, and they did not bow or compromise. And so we can call ourselves culturally proficient, don't mean we spiritually apt. You can call yourself whatever you want to, but it's how the white man sees you and how you react to it and how well we are able to look at that suffering. How well and that's why this movie is so powerful. Deal with the blues, the theology of the blues, the suffering in the midst, praise in the midst of suffering. And now it can be co-opted. That's the real commercialization. So ain't
I get what you're saying. No.
Again, I'm not though you don't disagreeing about, but so I'm using the term you said about Christianity. So no, for us, it ain't about a commercial Christianity. We always make gumbo. We use what we get to advance our agenda and our interests, right?
Right.
You know, we did that, right? We always do that. But our culture right now, the blues, the hip hop, the high apex is totally commercial, right? The commercialization of the Black religious tradition, all Black church, everything has been commercialized for the gain of monetization.
And ATR, African ATRs have been as well. So it's not just church. So so at this point, considering the work that needs to be done as a collective.
What's ATRs though? What do you mean by that?
Oh, I'm sorry. African traditional religions.
Okay.
ATR, that's what it's called.
What if I told you that Christianity is an African traditional religion? Would you believe me?
No, I believe it. We've discussed this. I do know that.
That's why I asked you what that meant, right? Because religion, let me just say this. Hear me out. This is what I'm saying. Religion is one thing. You can call yourself espousing anything, but it's the faith to manifest whatever the religiosity is. So religion is just a matter of culturalism and legalism. It's rules without relationship gonna lead to rebellion. And so the gospel is that, hey, look, what Jesus says, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. Well, simply put, I'm eating the word is me. I'm living character, I'm living integrity, I'm living So there are people like to espouse all these things, but the truth of the matter, and I've seen it in my 50 plus years of living, you can call yourself what you want. The question, can you show and prove it, right? Can you manifest it? Even with your cultural competencies and all the stuff we do, we still don't have no power. What do you call it? The Black church, the Black cultural movement, the ART, ATR, this group, that group, everywhere, group. In the synergy of the synchronicity and the algorithms that you brought up in the beginning of the point.
That's the whole point. We've got to get in sync.
We can't get in sync. We can't get in sync when we're when we can't touch and agree on the basic fundamental thing about our identity.
I think that was, to me, that theme to me just showed like we cannot, once we come together and honor, the frequency raises up, the praises raise up, whatever you want to call it. But things shift, things change.
But most people don't have praise. Most people are anxious. Most people are weary. Most people are depressed. Most people living out of fear. Most people have created their own little idolatry, their own little system, and it suffices because this is a mean, cruel world. And the Wayimbo and Project 2025 has told you, folk, what you going to deal with it. And I love the point. You gonna now deal with, y'all smart, y'all educated, y'all cultural competent, but you're gonna still deal with the racial terror that we used to inflict in 1832, 1932, and I'm gonna do it in 2025. And there's nothing you're gonna do about it because you could disengage the Black church, the Black religious faith tradition. I ain't said nothing about focusing on anything, but anything that allows us to touch and agree and come together. So you see the Metaneta community, the Hebrew Israelite, anything, that level of dysfunction, because we're not dealing with a spiritual, ethical reality where there's this level of accountability and responsibility and selflessness that it exists.
They don't, I think every space has accountability issues. All of them, no matter what you want to call it, the church, Sarasette, ATR.
For the sake of the conversation, I'm calling it all the church. Again, I'm calling it all the church.
We are one body. And I think that's one of the things, like, I think that because, I don't know what it is, maybe you can help me. Why do we feel, or certain folks feel, that everyone has to worship and show up in the exact same way, or else something is wrong or you're bad? Like,
can I ask you a question though?
Yes.
You did it because we've been enculturated and indoctrinated to other. So and that's the whole point of sin, right? When you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, now you become your own God. And now when you become your own God, now you're less likely to be selfless. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but the truth of the matter is, if we were to go back, again. Well, I thought you had maybe a challenge with that concept again, because I'm saying to you,
no, I'm not making a challenge. All I was going to say was I don't agree that makes someone selfish.
Again, you personally. Again, that's what I'm saying. So hear what I'm saying, right? You don't have to agree with it, right?
Yeah, no, I can hear it. Yes.
But that's why I'm about to give you some reality situation, right? That was my whole point for referencing the fact, if somebody come into your house right now, and if your man out there and you don't have no gun, and they gonna take your food and take your body, can you do something about it?
Yes. Maybe afterwards, but not during. So
Exactly. So you need protection. Women again, that's our problem now. Women, if you feel that you don't, women need to be safe. Women need to be protected.
I don't have any pushback on that. I don't have any type of pushback.
You're missing my point. That's why that love scene with men and women are so powerful in that, right? That's why it's so powerful. So I'm just using, again, if you say you can be able to survive on your own in the 21st century, you can, right? Because there are laws to protect women. There are laws and things in place. But since the history of man and the whole point of the biblical narratives and even the cultural narratives is that we need a family, we need a community to sustain all of us.
Oh, I agree with that. I would never say I don't need a man, or that men, fathers.
Don't miss the point. Don't miss the point, because this is the gospel. This is the whole point of the church. It hangs on selflessness, not selfishness. Love God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. So when you know love God, you see your neighbor as an extension of yourself. That's a level of reciprocity. But it makes us into the point where we're not going to eat each other up. Let me just close by saying this. Let me just say this. You shake your head. Let me just say this. People like to talk about the crabs in the barrel mentality. They talked about a lot in Baltimore, right? You've heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know the problem with that metaphor is everybody agree with that foolery. You know why they agree with that foolery? Because it sounds good. What they fail to realize is that the barrel is not the natural habitation of a crab.
I understand. Mm-hmm.
Crabs are supposed to live in the ocean. So when you put a thing in this unnatural, metaphysical, spiritual, cultural environment, you cultivate this level of self-hate and fighting. And that's all I'm saying. So it's even hard for us to agree because we can't see a vision of seeing that which is beneficial for ourselves. I can't even get you to say, I need the protection of a man, right?
What are you talking about? I'm a married woman. I know I need the protection
again,
from a man. I did not push back on that at all. I've never been.
Again, my point is,
okay, let's be clear. I never said
no. But again, my point is that the point is, it's not about the individual. It's about the community. It's about the family. That becomes the first system. That's the whole archetypical point. I would have loved for that movie to show us that it couldn't. Who is Sammy's mother? Who was his wife? Right? Who was his wife? So, and I love it. It didn't show that because I suggest to you it's implicitly layered in the movie, right? Because it dealt with the beauty of black male family relationships. What did Smoke and Stack do? Man, I'm gonna protect this woman. I'm gonna protect these women, and that's the piece that I'm talking about. But I'm just saying that we got all of these ideologies, all these ideas, and a lot of times the ideas have us. We don't really have the ideas.
I got you.
So we're close to these levels of dogma, and we can call it anything, but we really don't believe it because when rubber get the road, somebody come, we're gonna be scared, as you said, because we can't see that because it's gonna take some accountability and some natural consequences.
Well, okay. Selflessness. Okay. That is not just in the church.
I ain't say that. Why you keep making it about the church?
That's how it sounded to me. That's how it. That's how it.
No.
It came across.
No. I said. See, this is the thing. I said the gospel is fundamentally about that concept, and I'm saying that again. But
there's sacred texts that also admonish that as well, right?
You answering it.
There's sacred texts that others follow that also admonish and advise to be selfless. So why can't we?
I'm not arguing that though, but again,
no. But okay.
But what you're doing is, again, that's the point. I've never tried to pigeonhole the concept. That's why I said the gospel, and I said the African spirituality, whether it's beyond being embodiment in any religiosity. I've been pushing back on pigeonholing that concept. I said the gospel, and I didn't say the black church of Christianity. I didn't say the black church of Jesus. I'm talking about the theology. I framed my conversation around theology. But if one does not know what theology is, then it's a way of thinking about something.
No, I totally understand that. And I'm not arguing. See, that's what I was saying, because I had said about us agreeing as Black people, there are people in different areas that they value family, they value commerce, they value history, culture, and women. So why is this movie creating the separation when I felt I was encouraged that the film would bring more people together to see that we're all connected. We're all connected.
But
And
but I just see it differently though, right? Because
and
again, we can.
that's fine.
Let me just finish. Let me finish, right? Again, this is
Mm-hmm.
the part. This is a difficult part about having conversation, right? We interpret things based off our perspective. So what's good about the point of the movie is it is bringing people together, and it is. But that level of togetherness hangs on how we see the thing, right? And we cannot have authentic dialogue without us being able to listen and hear and not other and not judge. Never in my conversation have I purported any position on anything outside of the idea that I'm seeing within the movie. I ain't see it right or wrong or situation or whatever. I ain't trying to establish my point out by establishing a disclaimer. I ain't trying to apologize for anything, but
No.
I got a perspective in terms of how I'm watching this, right? But
Yes.
you and I saw that, and so you and I unified, right?
Yeah.
So,
And
so
we still are.
why can't we hang on that position? That's some point.
That's what I thought that we were.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the
All
point.
right.
So why is it that if we build community based off of what we agree on, we don't have to allow for a definition based off of division? Build off of whoever you can touch and agree with, build off of that community, regardless of whatever you're saying, right? But I'm saying it's oftentimes our own self-interest that causes conflict
True.
that contradicts our value system or our vision of agreeing to do something. So show me the communities that you're talking about where there is this economic thriving protection of our, in our Black community, our women are grossly disrespected. Children are wayward. Men are not present. That's the data. Now, I know all of the men I know in Baltimore, Memphis, Chicago are responsible for doing some great things.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the overarching narrative, right? Do we own our own institutions? No, we lost them. Do we own our own land, right? Thank God for the Black church is the only semblance of power that we have, right? Of cooperative economics and Black land, right? And what
Right.
people believe in, a white Jesus or a Black Jesus, that's irrelevant. It's what do we own? So this movie is really, for me, about Black ownership of their bodies, their land, their culture.
Yes.
And it's about the unity. We got to fight to unite. But even as you said, we would talk about, I don't need to comment around who disagree or who see it differently. As I said in my proposition, I stand on it. If any people think that it's demonic, they vampires. And you got to be careful of who we let in the house.
That was very clear. That was very clear. Now let's break that down. Now, what I found interesting, and it was very obvious, is that when the Irish came up, everyone was basically like, "No, go away," because they knew they could felt it. But when Mary, who again she felt hurt and rejected. She can't hang with the Black people. She with the white people, but if her secret is found out, there's no comfort. That's a whole different dialogue. But when she went and started walking and talked to them, they gave her gold coins. Now, did you feel that was any type of a message?
Of course. The movie.
In that?
You want me to reply? Yeah, absolutely. The message is simple. First of all, just because you're my color don't mean you're my kind. Number one, we hear that with our own people. Again, I'm talking about ideology. I'm talking about ideas and vision, right? So let's check this out. Let's deal with what you said first. A lot of times, people associate Southern culture with Black culture. You with me? I'm where you with me. I want you to understand this point because people miss that. I'm in the South. I grew up in the South, Sunflower County. Migration, family moved to Memphis and Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
In Baltimore, folk moved from South Carolina, North Carolina, up to Baltimore, Philly, Chicago, New York. A lot of after the Civil War and the mass immigration of Irish and Scottish, they came down south, and they were treated like niggas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of Southern culture is Southern culture. It's Irish culture. A lot of things, a lot of times, things that we associate as Africanisms, like when we say "I be doing this," Southern, it's Irish.
Okay.
You remember when the woman Paula Deen got into all this trouble around, she lived in Savannah, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They wonder how is it these white folks can do this stuff in Appalachia? They Southerners. So Southern and linguistic culture has a lot less to do with race, right? And so that's very, very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
For understanding that archetype and that prototype. Because he's now dealing with whiteness. And white folk, those white Irish and Scottish was a tier above black folk, and they were taught to foster their tyranny as Irish. So you see the Irish police, right? All these things. That's a whole prototype, right? So Mary, interestingly enough, her name is Mary. Mary had a quadrone, 1% of black blood in Mississippi, right? And as I can't think of his name, he said, you let her in. What they say, she family based off of that 1% of black blood and the fact that her mama was black, raising a black daughter who looked white. And so growing up in that, again, going back to my point about the man, he loved her so much. He said, look, you pass for white, and a lot of black people pass for white in that community. So she had to go to Little Rock, right? And that's the backstory. So this is to answer your question. So when they said, hey, that's why capitalism is so powerful. So because Smoke and Stack came down to do business. And
for their people, not just for themselves, they had a plan. They did. They said they wanted to open it up for their people too.
Let me finish. Right? Let me finish.
Okay.
Ultimately, this is our problem in the black community. That's why I say capitalism. Thank God for the black businesses. The black business is doing it for their own business interests because it can foster an opportunity to raise an economy and hire black folk to teach one, right? So let's look at the conflict. I'm just exploring your statement. Smoke and Stack got into a conflict around the fact that, man, these sharecroppers, they ain't got real money. So the gold coins that they gave her, don't forget where he got them gold coins from.
Oh, where did he get the gold coins from? I
go back and watch it. But this is the point.
Okay.
White people, she went back and thought, and they said, well, because they really was negotiating. This is deep. White folks coming into the house based off their sincerity, based off money.
Okay.
Right? So she's like, well, maybe they got money. Because we ain't making no money because all these people work on they sharecroppers. So even for the people, they had this conflict.
Well,
we got this conflict because we ain't gonna make no money. Because
Smoke said that and I want to say Annie were like, listen, they're gonna come in here, they don't have like a whole lot, but this is all that they have.
I'm asking you a question. You bringing situational ethics in.
What are you talking about? So what how else then am I supposed to answer it then?
I'm answering your question around
Okay, I'm listening.
they went out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said that they capitalism, that's why I started my point off with Smoking Stack. I said they had conflict. When he realized that they were not going to make any money, Stack was like, man, I ain't feeling this. Because but then that's the beauty of the Black tradition. It became less about money, going back to your earlier point, that they needed a place of praise in the midst of suffering. So even though they ain't got no money, they need to party, they need to get off all this trauma, they need to escape for a few minutes. But these white folks show up who might just have some money.
But they didn't want the money. They didn't want their money. They rejected it on both times. Now, if I'm correct me, I think
why did they reject them though? Don't miss that.
They didn't want their money because they knew that once they got entry in there, it's over.
No, they didn't want their money. They didn't want white folks to come in. They were white.
No, I understand that part. Yeah. No, I get that. But they didn't want their money because they knew that once they took it from them, that would give them a sense of what? Entitlement to come in and take over. They already know. So yes, we definitely, you're right. But I'm saying Mary took that money and came back in. She felt empowered now since she had actually been, quote unquote, seen. And she said, hey, Stack, look, I got some gold coins. But as soon as she took it, she got bit. And thus the vampires got inside of the house.
So let me take you back to your Christian tradition in your Bible school and your Sunday school, and I can give you many examples. But when Jesus was at the Last Supper, right? Again, and he said, Judas, go do what you got to do. So again, he sold them out for 30 pieces. Okay, this gold, this silver piece. Again, it means, and it deals with the whole Bible deals with economy. It deals with scarcity and character, regardless of whoever you saying. And that level of scarcity and lack and poverty puts us in a place, I don't care who it is or who's watching, but puts you in a place where, again, like Cain and Abel, you will kill your brother. Because the people like to say that money is the root of all evil, and that's not true. The love of money is the root of all evil. It's the idolatry of that, right? And so we see that as soon as she did it, when she got ready to go in and say, oh, I can engage these white people because she still can pass as white, right? Why is she in there? And they like, she family, it don't matter. And so as they negotiated whether or not they really had money, let me go see. And she went out there, right? She got that money, and what happened to her? She got bit. How many of us get bitten by our corporate positions, by our status, by our good jobs, we get bit all the time, and we go back into the house again because we got access, right? And that's why our communities are so dismantled. That's why our organizations, our families, become so dysfunctional, because we let the enemy in our house and our heart. So it's powerful. So again, and who was she able to bite when she got in the house?
The man who loved her the most.
But you know what? This is deep. Again, that's why this thing, regardless of whatever you call, is dealing with character. Why was he bitten? You know why? Because she was a married woman.
This is true.
And I love those love scenes. I love those love scenes, right? It was so beautiful and beautiful.
That one part of it was ugh. I don't even.
Again, you're a woman. Again, that's because you're a woman, right? But again, that's because you're a woman. You're saying that. I'm saying to you, I'm saying to you, man, again, all that's part of our European colonialization, right? And again, it's funny you're saying, yeah, but I saw it beautiful. I saw it beautiful. I'm looking at it from a male's perspective. And that's the beauty for it. See, again, the body, and again, that's that white supremacist Christianity still in you, because we associate situational ethics in it, right? That's why the guys, I don't care if it's musty. She's like, I gotta go watch. No, that's the beauty. Hold on, listen to the point, listen to it. He said it's beautiful, and he engaged, but the problem was she was married too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I know you did. That's why I'm bringing it up. So again, that's a shame, a problem that we've had in the Black church Christian tradition, is that was the shaming of the body and the shaming of the woman, and nasty and dirty. And I love that Samuel's like, no, man, ain't nothing like a musty woman, right? You're saying that because, again, listen to the point, right? But the point is that is not what made her dirty, right? Because he's going into the womb of that woman. That's a whole nother thing.
I agree, but that wasn't the part I was talking about.
It don't matter, but it's all the same, right? Let me finish this point.
Okay.
He went in there and he engaged her. And I'll talk about that that's a whole nother. He engaged her and she loved it. And that was the essence of that beautiful moment. That's why I said love it. But she was a married woman.
Right. Well, I really that part as a woman, but I was really thinking about, to me, it seemed like they had to exchange.
Why your face frowned up? Why your face frowned up?
Saliva. When it seemed there was a scene, if y'all haven't seen it, where they always say, "Ooh, you're slobbering," and I think it's again the mixing and the saliva. I think that's what changed them or whatever. And that part, I still don't know what that was about.
So you're not talking about Sammy and what? I guess you lost me right there.
I'm talking about when
Mary and Mary. Yep. I thought you were still talking about that. She was a vampire then, so that's why that saliva was so essential, because she's now a vampire in the house. I was about to say, you ain't never had your husband's saliva? Please, saliva.
No, that's different. That's my husband.
Right. Again, that's what we're going to, right?
So they were making a quote unquote covenant, if you will, to me, through the fluid. I'm not, that's, to me, it's like that fluid, when they would, the biting is definitely that one thing. But when they had to do that part with the saliva, I think that was the quote unquote mixing or something. I don't know. I was just curious.
Well, again, it's simple. It's love. It's, again, I think you was, that musty, that she was musty, same thing, right? But that don't matter, right?
No, that's not the same thing to me.
But again, it's not to you, but that's why I love the movie. Everything has a deeply spiritual meaning, and it forces us to look at the reality of humanity, of the flesh, of self-consciousness, right? But to your point about Mary, the saliva was defined so much because it was not covenant, it was contamination. It was contamination of the
contamination.
It was, he is now becoming a vampire, right? He is becoming a vampire, and not only, and this is deep now, not only by the blood, but also by the intercourse, by also now the saliva. And that's a whole nother story. And so all of this, to Naomi Mackey's point, it plays out the 10 Commandments, and it goes back to a point I was making, Mackey, if you heard me, when I was telling Kenda about the summary of the Decalogue, what you call it in church, or what they say is the golden rule. Love God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. The 10 Commandments is to foster a sense of selflessness, right? which will keep us from being vampires. Because again, the 10 Commandments came into place because Passover. What was Passover? The blood was over the doorpost. The death angel came. The vampire came to get him, right? But he couldn't touch him because of the blood. What's this whole point about the blood? When Jesus was going into Jerusalem, oh, you just had Resurrection Sunday. He went in on Palm Sunday. They wanted him to come in and liberate politically and socially the community. But no, he didn't go there, right? He had to go to the church, the temple, because they had forgotten the reason for the blood.
Yeah.
It's not about self-interest, it's about selflessness. So,
hey, God. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you go.
No, I was just going to share. We're going to hang on here for maybe 15 more minutes because Albert Phillips, you writing these paragraphs. You need to come and just share that real quick. I'm going to drop the link again. If you want to join, you have to have your camera on. And I'm not into any arguments. We're not debating. We're not arguing or anything like that. But if you have a comment, that's fine. Not a debate. That's not what this is about. So I dropped that in there real quick.
Are you getting a lot of comments?
Yes, I'm getting a few. I can only see the ones I can see them from places, but some of them are really long.
So let me just say this to go back to the point of, I think whoever said about the 10 Commandments. Again, so when you become a student, I've studied all of these religions, right? And even the Ifa, and even Europe and all this, it hangs in that same concept that there has to be a blood sacrifice, right? And so all of the cosmology is anchored in this same thing. That's why people call it voodoo. They call it hoodoo because of these spiritualities. It still manifests into the same biblical and spiritual principle, right? People would like to try to argue a position. I'm not here to argue a position, but to raise level of thinking around going back to the point, how do we unite and deal with our physical, social, cultural, and most important, economic realities? What good is to say you got all this, you deep in all these religions and these philosophies and ideas, but the ideas have you don't have the ideas. And so what happens is individuals have to stand on their idea, and then it fosters conflict. And that's the same conflict that's led to a lot of the fall of humanity in the name of religion, in the name of politics, and a lot of other stuff. But ultimately, if it does not foster man taking care of his woman covering her child, where man is out economically situated in the building community, and men hunting and women gathering and building that ecosystem and tying each tribe and family together, if it does not do it, it's not working. And our ancestors, again, I ain't used the black church, which was used by the oppressor as a tool for manipulation, exploitation, and demonic activity. And we said the devil is a liar. We had a different interpretation anchored in our African spiritual lens. See, when out in the South, what they call hoodoo, my grandmother always burnt her hair. We always had these things that are part of our culture. The black church and the black Baptist tradition, the Church of God in Christ, we do tarry to the altar, to the Holy Ghost come. See, y'all don't, that stuff is Africanisms. It's all.
Oh no, I know it is. I know it is. And that's why I really hope that as we continue to move forward, that we can stop, because we got to get our money together. I was saying, like, I still don't understand, and this is off topic a little bit, but like Garvey, Booker T, Du Bois, all great thinkers with great plans. Why couldn't we all just get on one accord and then execute in your way, the way you? Why?
But again,
yes, you can answer that.
Again, I'm saying to you, we abolish slavery. We abolish Jim Crow. we put the systems in place that the enemy saw it and they had to destroy it. They had to kill it. They had to kill it through the black church. They had to deal it with the black business. They had to clear it with the black preacher. They had to destroy that because the first 200 years was about black folk out Britishing the British. It was, we mastered everything we did because we created that, right? What you do,
Yeah.
let me just finish. Let me just finish. What you do not know is Booker T. Washington and W.E. Du Bois was clearly anchored in not only the Black Philanthropic Church, i.e., again, I'm a little biased because I'm AME, I'm African Methodist, right? But they set up these schools with Black philanthropy, nickels and dimes of Black folk. And they were always economically and politically say take both and. Marcus Garvey came to America to go to Tuskegee under Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington died. So he's coming from Jamaica, and he was of a colony of the British, right? So he's coming to America, and he's dealing with an African cultural consciousness. We all immersed it in our community, in our culture, and it became much more thriving in the East, up in New York, where there were different kinds of hodgepodges of people, but in the South, where there was this blatant tyranny and intimidation because of the Civil War, some movements did not occur, right? So the point for pushing back is that we don't celebrate the power and the success of our ancestors and our elders, and what they were able to do in the name of Jesus, right? And what that vibration meant, right? And the thing is, as more educated and more economically literate and powerful people, we should be able to take what they were able to do to a whole nother level.
Those prayers are still sustaining us.
But we don't know how to pray because we do not know how to get in the algorithm. Because we don't get it. We don't know how to pray. We don't know how to meditate. We don't understand these vibes. We don't understand what it means when I say I come in this name, right? There's power in his name. Our elders, they may not have been as so-called educated as us, but they had the spiritual wisdom to understand the point, the theological point. They ate the fish and spat out the bones, right? They knew, bottom line, what it took to survive 400 years of oppression. They knew what it meant to make sure my boy and my wife was protected. And a lot of these men were lynched. Let me just say this, and you said something about those movies. I watched Django Unchained, right? I didn't like it. I would have loved it if don't tease me. Cut off, if you want to make a slave movie, cut off his penis. Let everybody see that, right? If you're going to do it, take it all the way, because that's what they did with black men when they lynched them. So now, show us, that's the trauma of the cross. Show us everything if you want to. And this guy in this movie, he showed us everything without showing us everything. It was brilliantly done. Brilliant.
No, he did an excellent job. I have no regrets, but I'm going to bring on right now Naomi. She wanted to share a comment, and then we're going to go ahead because we've been on here for almost 2 hours. Really? Naomi, come through.
Hey, Kenda.
Hello.
I miss your movie takes.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, doctor. How are you? Yeah, I had put the question of the archetypes. I know you used to always do the archetypes.
Oh yes, I did the archetypes.
Yeah, for the brothers and maybe a couple of the women, because I know I was thinking that the brothers definitely had soldier energy. I mean, they were literally soldiers as part of their stories. But I felt like Smoke, like the one in the blue, was a little more leader and negotiator, and
you better go ahead and take them lessons. Yes,
that negotiator line when he was negotiating with the little girl to watch his truck, and then in the store. I mean, they really were bold with that negotiator, and he gave a lot of leader energy. And the other one was more soldier through and through to me. because
Yes.
and someone else pointed out that he was wearing red, so he's very much in the root chakra.
The
He's
root
focused
chakra
on money. He's focused on, he was trying to resist, Mary, but in the end
and the
he ended up.
primal urges.
Yeah, so I was thinking, those archetypes for those guys. And of course we know who the conservationist is, very obvious. Annie.
Cool. Now
Annie.
I thought, well, yes, on a very surface level of knowing how to control, but she was also the mother.
Right. Devotee for
A
sure.
devotee,
Yeah.
because she healed. She
Right.
was in that indigo, which is a very sacred color to our people. But I see you on that though. But she definitely was the healer and balance. I thought it was interesting that she wore that blue throughout.
Y'all say mother?
Go ahead.
Did y'all say mother?
Mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Y'all called her mother?
Yeah, she was literally a mother. She talked about
Energy wise.
No.
Yeah, and she
Okay.
went back to she wanted to go back into the afterlife to be with her baby again. You saw her, give to the little babies that came to the store to shop, and she was more focused on the community and being there for them. So she's very devoted to that community. She didn't want to take his money. She didn't want to leave with him. She always received him when he came back, but she didn't want no parts of what he was doing because, she's like, I'm here, I'm with the people, I'm not going off nowhere with you. So that spoke, that's where I saw that mother is. And someone also pointed out that she was wearing blue because blue is a protective color. Like
Yes.
some people say, it protects you from the Hank, which is what she said the vampires were. She thought it was a Hank because of the way he was acting at the door. So I thought that was interesting too. And for the Ten Commandments thing, I liked the doctor's take on it too, and all of that, wisdom that he gave with that. But I was thinking when I saw the movie, it was disobedience of the Ten Commandments, and they were being punished for it. Because everybody who had sex and all of that, all the sinning they were doing, they got attacked. And even with the Asian lady getting angry and saying what she had to say to let them in, like everybody committed a sin and everybody got punished for their sin. That the boy Sammy and was it Stack that got away with what they did, but I feel like they kind of still got punished for it too, or almost, so I thought that was interesting. I was thinking, typical horror movie, the people who have sex always end up getting killed, or
I didn't even think about that, but
yeah,
that is true.
Yeah.
Can I ask Naomi a question? Because again, I'm always asking us to unpack why we say and think a certain way around something. And Naomi, you brought up the whole point of the Ten Commandments. I don't know if you heard me reference the whole root of the Ten Commandments is what you call, and I love it, disobedience, right? Which you associate sin with, which has its root theologically and ideology in the Garden of Eden, right? The disobedience, going back to our first beginning of our conversation, is out of God's will, out of God's presence of eternal life. And interestingly enough, they took on again what I pushed it back with Kenda on is self-consciousness. What do you remember when God said, Kenda and Naomi, I don't know if you have any Christian church tradition, but God says, how do you know you are naked? How you know you were naked? You remember that? That was what? Exactly. So they covered themselves. And so what happens is we have brought up with a tradition that we think sex is evil and bad. So it was not the act of sex that made it evil, because sex, again, as I said, as physical beings, it is a natural, beautiful part of eating. You're going to eat, you're going to have sex, and you're going to poop. That's what makes us human, right? Now, Kenda associated, maybe people make it dirty, but if it's done in a way, it is always sacred. but our mindset puts it on it, so that which takes us out of presence is oftentimes dealing with ignorance, superstition, money, all those things that we use. Sex selfishly, we use money selfishly, we abuse for our food. That's the carnality of it associated with the Ten Commandments and the summary of it. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm always challenging on and let you know how these ideologies are so embedded, but I oftentimes challenge us to really understand how it shows up, how it manifests. And thank you, Miami, because you make a brilliant and a powerful point. And I want to show you that also smoke and stack, if you go back and remind yourself of your Christian education or Bible study, is Elisha. And
I was going to ask you about that. I wanted to close out on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that down.
Understand, again, I love the terms you all using, archetypes, right? It is the disciple. All of those things are anchored in this archetypical, and not that one is good or bad. Everything manifests certain kind of leadership qualities that again allows us to be able to live together as one, right? So they twins, Cain and Abel, Esau, Jacob, Mary and Elizabeth. You see it, Rachel and Leah. It's these archetypical things that are to teach us a spiritual and a metaphysical point that we are able to contextualize and manifest in the real world.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, Naomi, I appreciate you, and I'm definitely going to have to do like a part 2 because we just got off track because there were so many other type of questions.
It was beautiful. I think we were.
No, it was good, but I usually have my outline with questions, but I just flowed. But I want to do.
Yeah, there's a lot in this movie. There's so much to explore. It was very rich to me. And you can go from a spiritual to religion. You can go through, the music aspect. Yeah, politics. I mean, it's got everything in it, and the racial, the light skin, dark. I mean, it had a lot of everything, and the sex. Oh my God! If it was it vulgar? Was it not so vulgar? Like I'm hearing different. So many people have.
But here's the thing. This is what I said. Now I didn't have a problem with how they did it, just because again, these people didn't have the opportunity, I'm sure, to take a shower and light some candles and make it romantic and all of that stuff. I mean, come on.
Oh, sweatiness is the best. Oh, you don't know. That's the beauty of life. And that's what I call, keep in mind, light has only been in existence for 100 years, right? Soap and water and all this, again, we so in our selfish technology, right? That, these things, oh yeah, no, really. Think about this. Think about it, right? Think about it. But again, we look at in the past through our modern techno.
True. But that's what I said. They don't have what's wrong with them the way that they were doing it, because who has the time to do all that extra stuff?
That's the beauty of blues. Blues fostered expression, sex, love, violence. That's what the beauty of reproduction does. But
and it was over less than 24 hours. Well, pretty much a 24-hour movie. So if they had more time, that it might have been different. But it was I like that it was just a one day kind of thing, and you just are seeing how their day evolves. So when Annie and Stack got it on, they ain't have time to do all that, and she didn't even know he was coming over. It might have been a little different, but and, when you're at a party and you just get it in, so I mean, it was funky, and I think that was a nod to the music. The music is funky. The music is bringing out the lust.
The soundtrack is amazing. Anyone, if you go to Spotify, they have the soundtrack and different Easter eggs talking about the area, the time, the twins.
I heard about it. I
Mhm.
haven't checked it out yet, but I heard about it.
Yeah.
But I love your point, Naomi, and this is the thing that I try to push back with folks. The beauty of life is that it's funky, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
we create these epics around it, right? And it's funny seeing Kenda's face when I said those things. That's life, that is the beauty of humanity, right?
True.
We have to smell each other. We have to do it. That's what happens. When
That's how you know when you in love. You can
you,
smell them.
no, and that's why you can hate people too, right?
If you can smell them.
As a Scorpio, I have no complaints there. Let me tell you.
Oh,
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
You said as a Scorpio.
I'm a
Look at it.
funny acting Gemini. I'm a fly away. But anyway,
That's what your mouth say.
Right. When that music get to playing and that liquor get to flowing, you know what I'm saying?
True. That hence my 33-year-old son. But anyway, I digress.
And Naomi, if affectionately, archetypally, what do we call the liquor in the blues tradition?
Spirits.
Exactly.
All right. The spirits.
The question is, which kind of spirit? That's a whole kind of another thing. That's
okay. Right. Well, Naomi, I thank you so much for hopping on. I'm about to get off of here.
Okay.
And but there's more to this subject. I think I'm going to end up doing another. I'm gonna have to do it.
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
Something else.
You got to do
just because it's too layered to just talk from just one angle. And I would like to have like a round table, but I think I might get some of my hoodoo folks on next, and maybe someone from.
How you know I'm not hoodoo?
You know what? Excuse me. That's very true. We are all Black people are hoodoo.
Exactly. That's been
my mother.
That's what I'm saying. Again, you keep doing it. That's how we label.
I keep doing it.
No. Like you said it. You said again. I'm listening, right? And the point I keep making is that when you said, that's why I asked the question. The Black church, African spiritual tradition is embedded in every aspect of our life.
I believe you, but most people ain't owning up to it like you are. That's why.
Again, that's another challenge. How do you know what most people are doing until you engage?
No, I'm not saying that they're not doing it.
You said most
people. They're not talking about it.
A lot of people
not doing it.
No, listen to what I'm saying. That's the beauty of the movie. We're talking about it. And you'll be so surprised how much we unify and agree on it, but we cannot define ourselves based off of what we disagree on, right? As we become, education brings on a higher level of consciousness, right? So again, different people see in different things. I can agree and understand exactly what a person talking about, and knowing that they can, just because you got a position don't mean it's true and right, because we all got hold on to various dogmas and ideologies that really may not be true, because we don't understand the point of it, right? So I try not to other people, right? I live to.
I don't either, but I get called out on that sometime. But I'm saying that to say that I would really want to hear what other folks thought about it from their quote unquote vantage point, and I bet you everyone will like we're saying, be saying the same thing. So maybe next week I'll do it, and maybe in a couple of weeks I can have everyone on to really talk about it, because we need to build communities up and out. We got to.
And I'm gonna mess with you as we get ready to close.
What I do now?
No, you ain't doing anything. I'm just saying to you, we can't run away from who we are, and we need to build community. We need to build our faith traditions. What do you call it? Church? What do you call it? Temple, mosque? What do you call it? Home? What do you call it? Joy factor? Whatever. We need to be in conversation and community around the beauty and the funkiness of life.
Yes. So before we go, how can people follow you, find you, get to know you?
That was a rhetorical question, but go to Kevin Andre Brooks. I almost said something else, but Kevin Andre Brooks is on Facebook, and Brooks Bespoke is we doing the work, building community in Memphis, Baltimore, and Chicago, in Baltimore, Chicago, Memphis. I'll be in Baltimore real soon, building community, and you'll be welcome to come in if you ain't scared to know the truth.
Yeah, you know I ain't scared.
Talking about you. I'm talking about listeners.
Oh.
You said listeners.
Oh, all right.
You know, this Black Christian preacher talking. Forgive me, so this, so but that's how people can follow me. But I'll be up there soon. I'll be up there for Chase. Call me. He has an Afro Pete. I'll be up there too.
Oh, okay. Yes, maybe. Yeah, let me know.
I'll be up there that time, and I'm gonna probably stay a week or two up there. That's my other home. So I miss my Baltimore family. And
we miss you too, for real. So guys, I hope this conversation was helpful. My name is Kenda Bell, also known as the Joy Factor Mama, and you can follow me by Kenda Bell on all platforms. And I will be sharing my landing page for my shirt, I Am the Algorithm, because we make this world go round. If you didn't get anything else out of that, when we are together in sync, in motion, we are the algorithm, past, present, future. We can change things. We can move things. We can manifest. And so I hope that this film continues to bring us together. I'm speaking bringing it together. And I encourage my brothers and sisters who, for whatever their reasons are concerned about seeing it, consider it, because it's going to inspire you to be greater. It's going to inspire community. To see a glimpse of what our ancestors endured.
That's right.
For us to be able to have the option to not do. We have the option to not do. One of the things that the ancestors to me, if you're listening, they say, don't stop worrying about just do what I would have done if I had known.
You better be careful now. You're preaching like a Christian now, girl. Go ahead now.
I still, anyway, I'll talk to you later. I am a universal soul.
Yeah, again, language is important. Christian just means universal. You know that Christ-like.
Yes, I am.
That's what I'm saying. And it's fundamentally about really manifesting that presence and that power. And once we decode and understand the language, we will walk in the light, the beautiful light. Come with a dewdrops of mercy shines bright. When lightness shows up, darkness starts to run, and the vampire cannot exist when the sun is rising. So, this mighty light of yours, we're gonna let it shine, and we're gonna bring our lights together. And we're gonna transform the world.
Ashe and amen, and so it is. And
thank you for this was fun. I didn't know we had this much time, man. I missed 2 meetings for this.
Okay, well, we get ready to go now because I didn't plan to be on here either, but we kept going. But we're going to have to do like a part 2 because I'm going to have different conversations. And then I want to bring everyone together like I always do. So be on the lookout. And I appreciate you.
Are you going to have your communion? I know you used to do your wine and stuff. So you bring the communion, you bring the wine, I bring the bread.
Okay, today I just had.
I'm just messing with you. I bring you. I bring the blood, so we can and the body.
Okay, all right then, and so it shall be. I
appreciate the experience.
All right,
love you. Send my love to your husband and the family. God bless you and keep you.
I sure shall. Thank you.
Right.